rolling river God, little stones are smooth, only once the water passes through. Now I am a stone, rough and grainy still, trying to reconcile this river's chill. But when I close my and feel you rushing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when the sunset comes, my prayer will be just one, that you might pick me up and notice that I am just a little smoother in your hands. Sometimes raging wild, sometimes swollen high, but never have I known this river dry. The deepest part of you is where I want to stay and feel the sharpest edges wash away. But when I close my eyes and feel you rushing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when the sunset comes, my prayer will be just one, that you might pick me up and notice I am I'm just a little smoother in your hands. Rolling river God, these little stones are smooth. It's only once the water passes through.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Andrea Weatherhead. I am a minister here at Center for Spiritual Living Seattle. And this month, we have been talking about Science of Mind teachings. And I just want to say how happy I am to see you all here to learn about this morning. And I'm really happy to know that the people online who are part of our community are here in consciousness as well. It's all one, and near and far, we're all raising ourselves together this morning. So we've been talking about Science of Mind teachings. Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of our teaching, wrote a book called Science of Mind. And the reason he called it Science of Mind was that he wanted to prove the existence of God, spirit, universe, potential field of all, quantum field, however you want to name that larger thing that really expresses life and through all of us, creativity. He wanted to have us be able to prove that. And so he wrote this book, and for the last couple of weeks, Reverend Abigail gave a talk at the beginning of the month where she talked about oneness, that we're all one, that we are all one unique expression from one source. She talked about creative process, how we create from spirit moving through us and manifesting in our lives, and how spirit is always creating outside of our own lives as well. And she talked about a lot of other tips that we could do to try this out, because this month is about experimenting for yourself in the laboratory of your soul. So she thought gratitude notebooks, pretty simple place to start. How do you feel after you do that process? She also talked about noting synchronicities, which is a scientific word for miracles. What miracles are happening that converge, that all these things that shouldn't have happened at the same time somehow came together and you had an amazing experience? Taking note of those. She asked you to do that. And then Kathy Ann followed up last week with talking all about consciousness is caused. What do we mean by that? We mean that what is in your consciousness results in your manifest world as you see it. And she talked about finding a new normal for yourself and trying that on. And even trying something like look up when you're feeling stuck, you're feeling limited. Look up. Just as simple as that. So there's an experiment for everyone and wherever they are in their process. So I encourage you to try these teachings out. The talk that I'm doing today is called Don't Believe All You Hear. Well, what kind of God gives me a talk that's called Don't Believe All You Hear? I mean, what kind of validity do I have now? You're not going to believe anything I'm saying, right? But the science, you can take it, but we're also talking about testing out theories, and what's the best way to test this teaching? So the scientific process is pretty simple. You have an idea, you've seen something happen, you have a theory about why it happened, but you don't have proof. So you test it out, then you get some results, and then you have an understanding. And that's what we can apply to spiritual practice as well. So I'm going to share a little bit about my journey through these teachings with these universal spiritual truths, just in hopes that it might resonate with you. So I had tried a lot of different parts of these practices, and I sometimes got results and I sometimes didn't. But the spiritual truth out there is just as true as all other unseen things, like electricity or gravity. We can't see those things, but we know they're true. So when I was testing out some of these practices, I wasn't so much that the actual theory wasn't true, but I was botching the experiment. I was getting in my own way. It would be as though you were trying to prove electricity, and you put a broken bulb in a socket, and you run over to flip it on the wall, and it doesn't work, and you say, see, there's nothing to all this electricity everyone's talking about, right? But life is about a series of tests, right? We're testing theories all the time. We try something, maybe it's not for you, maybe it is for you. You get a result. You tried it when you first started walking. That was something you tested over and over again. But all of this journey is about finding out about you, what works for you. And the journey about discovering yourself is one of the most sacred journeys there is. That in itself is a sacred path. And Ernest Holmes said, the greatest spiritual geniuses, whether it was Moses, Buddha, Plato, Socrates, Jesus, or Emerson. They've all taught us to look within ourselves for God. And Sir Judge Thomas Troward, who was a huge influence on Ernest Holmes' teaching, said, "My mind is a center of divine operation. The divine operation is always for expansion and fuller expression." So you are on a spiritual journey, whether you're conscious of it or not, my friends. And so you might as well take advantage of getting conscious about it and being able to expand more and more. So, the title of the talk, Don't Believe Everything Everyone Tells You. You know, we're actually told a lot by a lot of different forces in our world about who to be and how to have a good life and how we can improve ourselves, right? We have the advertising industry. We have the pharmaceutical industry. We've got the fashion industry. Your life is going to be better. And you go into the store, and how many have had this happen? You go in and you see something on the hanger and it looks really good, and you go into the dressing room and it's like, oh my God, no, that does not work for me, right? That was high-waisted pants for me in the 70s. I was a teenage rectangle, and something that accentuates the waist does not work for me. But I tell you these little stories because it's all instances of trying something out, having the experience, and then having the result, and then having an understanding, right? You try it first. So don't listen to us. Try some of these things for yourself. But if you're just sitting and listening and understanding intellectually, it's not going to work. You need to have a visceral experience with these practices, with looking up, with oneness, with synchronicities or miracles. Emma Curtis Hopkins, one of our founders' teachers, said that the order needs to be practice, experience, and then understanding emerges. But we get this turned around. For some reason, I don't know whether it's we've had an experience where we got afraid and we needed to understand something first before we would put our little toe in to try something. And so we study something first and then we kind of try it out. But that's the exact opposite, because the kind of understanding that I'm talking about is at a soul level. This kind of understanding is a spiritual understanding, not an intellectual one. And when you know that you've had that experience, you feel good. You just feel at peace. You feel joy. It's not something that you know in your head. So I came across these teachings when I was in my mid-30s, and I had a broken heart. I was wounded. I felt horrible. I bet a lot of people come to a spiritual center for that reason. I had lost a disproportionate amount of myself through this breakup, and a friend of mine said, "You should come to my spiritual center because they're celebrating Groundhog's Day." And I went, "Groundhog's Day? Who celebrates Groundhog's Day?" This place does, because the spiritual director, Kathy Ann, has decreed that this is their high holy holiday because all the other religions have taken all the other dates. So you should come. Well, I had to come. I mean, come on. So I came, and Kathy Ann very brilliantly integrated, and this is a long time ago. She was in '96. She integrated all of the components that make up Science of Mind teachings. If you're not familiar with Science of Mind, it blends what's common amongst all the world religions with science and philosophy. So all the ancient wisdom and all the modern wisdom is in this teaching. And she blended it beautifully. She had a groundhog having a Jungian experience, not chasing its shadow, not confronting its shadow. She had Star Trek in there with the Force. She had quantum field and string theory, and she had Jesus in there somewhere. But the whole talk was so uplifting. And what I remember from that was one of the phrases that you've probably heard before, but it's worth repeating. It's worth repeating every day. The universe is in a conspiracy for your benefit. Imagine saying that every day. That's a practice right there. Oh, how refreshing. And I was hooked. And I uncharacteristically signed up for their class. It was called Foundations, and now it's called Beyond Limits. I don't join stuff right away, but I did. And I went in this class. And you know, I'm a good student. I do studenting. That's not even a word. But I do that, and I like learning. So I intellectually understood the concepts of science of mind. Oneness, I can get that. One life, one energy comes through, expresses, got it. We're all from one place, one source. And I could even understand the creative process, how the universe is constantly creating, and it constantly creates through me, channeling through me. And I could even understand, all the idea of changing your beliefs and changing your life. But I understood that one a little better than some of the others. But I was still aching, wounded inside, even though I was in this class, and even though I took the class again, and then I took it again. But it is worth repeating. But one of the reasons that I could really relate to shifting my beliefs and having a different experience was that when I was in junior high, I really, really wanted to be a cheerleader. I'd had the experience of the shift of the belief, and this is what happened. I wanted to be a cheerleader because I wanted to be in with all the cool kids. I wanted to be popular and know all the cool boys and all that. And so a couple friends of mine and I got together, and I chose the song that we were going to audition for. And, it was a song that I would have chosen because it's a funk song, not a cheerleading audition kind of song, not the bubblegum kind of sugar, fast, upbeat song. It was a slow funk groove called Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again. And, it was really slow, and it's like bonk, bonk, bonk. And I got out there and we choreographed. Choreography's not my gift. We choreographed, and I got out there, and I proceeded to have some convulsive, uncontrolled movements of my limbs to the bow, 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 and I didn't get it. I didn't get chosen. So I went home and I was really sad. And that year, we had my Norwegian cousin staying with me, our family, and her name is Inger. And she was 10 years older than me, so she had some wisdom. And she said, Andrea, why are you so sad? And I said, I'm sad because I worked so hard on my audition and I didn't make it on the cheerleading squad. And she said, oh, what is this cheerleading? They have no cheerleaders in Norway. I said, well, there are people that dress in really cute outfits, and they have these pom-pom things. Kathy Lindsay has some in the back there. And they have these pom-poms made up of shredded paper, and they shake them around, and they jump around. And she said, yeah, but she's barely holding back her laughter at this point, because when I started to describe what a cheerleader is, it sounded so ludicrous. I mean, who are these people? No dissing on anyone who was one. But she could barely hold back her laughter, and then she said, but what do they do? And I said, well, they encourage the crowd to cheer. They lead the crowd in cheering at a sporting event. And she said, can't the crowd cheer on its own? Well, in seconds flat, she had shifted my paradigm about cool cheerleading to, okay, maybe this is not something I have to worry about, whether I failed or not in, or even take much time doing. Maybe it's not for me. It was a shift of paradigm that happened in seconds flat, 180 degrees, and from that point forward, when I learned about it as a thing, like shifting your paradigm, calling it something, I'd had the experience. I knew what was possible. And then I could shift my paradigms myself because I knew what it was, and I could apply that feeling that I had from earlier. And I didn't need my cousin Inger to be here. And you can do that. Because if you want to shift your belief about something that you're feeling limited in, go back to a time when it did shift about something else. And get that feeling. And if you want cousin Ingers, we have a million of them. They're practitioners. Just say, I want you to be my cousin Inger and help me shift my paradigm. So prove these things by doing them. But I have to admit, I'm kind of an intellectually dominant frontal brain person. And so I was still, approaching these teachings from a kind of a intellectual place. And I was taking part in the Better Business Breakfast, which is the Spirit at Work that Dawn presides over. And Sharon Ramey, who some of you know, she's a minister here, and she teaches still online, even though she moved to Texas. But fantastic cheerleader for God. Speaking of cheerleaders, I mean, she's so positive. And I had really wanted a job. I was going after a job. I'd set my intention on a job, and it was at Experience Music Project, which is now called Mopop. And I'm out of breath. That cheerleading really took it out of me. I think I'm channeling the 13-year-old. Anyway, so this job had everything I've ever done. It had recording engineering, it had acoustics, it had graphics, it had multimedia production, it had writing, it had everything I've ever done. I mean, perfect job for me. I knew I should have that job. And so I got the job. But when I was at the Better Business break, Sharon came up to me and said, how'd the interview go? And I said, I got it. And then she said, praise God, in her way, with her beaming smile. And when you're with Sharon, you can't help but smile back. She's contagious. But in my mind, and I smiled back and I said, praise God. And then inside I was saying, what's God got to do with it? I did this. I had the resume. I had the experience. I had what it took. And I couldn't get that. So I was driving home from that terribly early breakfast that she used to do, and I thought, okay, what did it take for me to get that job? What did it take? And I started looking at synchronicities, the thing that Abigail really wanted us to look at. I had sent a resume at about 8 o'clock at night into this totally obscure listserv of people that it bombards everyone's emails. Nobody ever reads it, but it was my way of trying to put myself out there. One person who was part of a 5-person staff at Experience Music Project, they'd only just started the whole thing, so there were only 5 people working there, was working late and decided to read the email. She never reads those emails, she told me later. She deletes them because there's too many. She called me at about 8:30 at night and said, I saw your resume, I thought I should talk to you. And it was confusing because it was 8:30 at night and I thought she was my cousin. And so I derided her for not staying in touch. But after we got there, we got through that. And then I said, can I take you to lunch? And she said yes, and I took her to lunch the next day, and we got along really well. And she said, I think I can help you. I think I can get this resume to the person who's the hiring manager, who is a rock star in the exhibit design business. She's opened global museums. And I said, wow, that's so generous. So she got it to the person who then called me for an interview. I went in for an interview. We laughed a little. I asked some good questions. Went really well. And then at the end, she said, I just wish you had more museum experience. And my head bowed, and I knew that was it, because I had 0. And she said, but I have enough for both of us. You're hired. Do you see how many miracles had to happen for me to get that job? I mean, I don't even need to trace them. The obscure email, opening that, calling, me answering, going to, and circumventing an HR process that had hundreds of resumes. Hundreds for that plum job. Yeah, I did it. It was all me. Praise God indeed, right? So that experience, looking at it and assessing it for how many miracles there were, builds and deepens my faith, because I know that I can do that again, and I can go and I can set a high intention, and I can know God's in my corner because I saw it. So do that with any success you've had. Look and see what happened with those things. Emma Curtis Hopkins said, you will notice a great difference in your power if you say that everything good that happens in your life is a demonstration of the presence of the Holy Spirit. Everything good in your life is a demonstration of the presence of the Holy Spirit. When you do that, you increase your power. So look at your life and intentionally know Spirit's in your corner. But again, being kind of a mental person, It's taken a long time for me to get stuff into my heart, out of my head. It was 15 years before I decided I would become a practitioner. I think I hold the record. And the song that Charles Holt sang about the rough rock becoming smooth, I was becoming a marble by the river of God's life going by. So I took Inward Journey, and that was the first year for practitioner studies. And I walked into that class having suffered yet another big loss in my life. I had gone through a divorce. Remember, this is 15 years later. And my father had died within 6 months, and it was sort of a double body blow year for me. I was really, really, really sad. And I have to admit that I was so sad that I was dating on the side. Not really dating, literally, but I was taking classes from other places other than CSL. Yeah. And I became a little bit of a Shift Network addict. The Shift Network was started around that time. So some of the classes I took were self-love, getting over addictions, discovering my inner Shakti, emotional liberation, feminine power, successful dreamer. And I was also pursuing psychic readings, tarot readings. I was going for Western astrology and Eastern astrology readings. And just add numerology readings on top of that. I was really hungry for healing. But at the same time, every class that I took, I still felt broken. But simultaneously, I was here immersing myself in these teachings and in these practices. And this teaching alone got it through my thick skull into my heart that I am perfect, whole, and complete exactly as I am. I am as God created me. There is nothing to fix. I am not broken. And that's true for you too. And yeah. Clap for yourselves. It's all true for all of you. And the reason those classes didn't work for me was because I was going into every single one of them trying to fix something. Guess what happens when you go into something trying to fix yourself and you pay attention to what's wrong and what's broken? You get more of it. Thank you. Yes, it's what you're paying attention to. And so until I really got it here that I am, as God created me, whole and perfect and complete exactly as I am, and there's nothing else to fix, I started to really shift and soften into this teaching where it became more of my life. And really, those other classes that I was taking, when you boil them down, it really is pretty much science of mind at the blueprint, at the base of what they're teaching, and they have these extended topics. And so I felt like I was getting the real thing here, the real thing. And you know what's great is that our youth get to have that. They get to grow up knowing they're whole and perfect and complete exactly as they were created. They don't have to wait until they're a curmudgeonly old, 40, 50-year-old to figure that out. So you celebrate you. This is your journey. Don't listen to anybody else about who you should be. Just love who you are. You're God's creation. Look at yourself in the mirror. Tell yourself you love you. It sounds trite. It just really works. Give yourself a break. Don't have so much negative talk, as Kathy Ann mentioned last week. Even if that's your practice. Even a practice like accepting compliments graciously. That's a practice because you're not putting down the God that is you. And that's something that I've been working on for a while. Because loving you is God, and it took me this long to get this. It took me a really long time to get that God resides from within. God's my intuition. God's my ideas. God's the way I solve a problem. God is the gifts that I have. God is all of those things. It's not out here. Well, it is out there, but it's in here too. It's everywhere. But, Emma says, no word can express your understanding of God. You are it. I am my own understanding of God. All that God is, I am. And mine has a sense of humor because it gave me a talk that told you not to believe me. Believe me, believe you. You will have this experience. We say that God made us in its image. But truly, the reverse is true. Your God is made in the image of what you make of your God. Who is your God? Who is it? Mine might be funny, but it's also loving and wise and powerful. It's capable of anything. When I call upon it, it's my personal, powerful source. But your God's going to be different from Kathy Ann's. It's going to be different from Abigail's. It's going to be different from Ernest Holmes because it's personal to you. And if it's not performing well for you, then as Kathy Ann has said, get a bigger God. Get a bigger God. And know that if you know yourself and your God, you can't just listen to what I say about it because that's a secondhand God. Get it for yourself and have a personal experience with it. So just in closing, I started this practitioner studies, and we had a retreat at the beginning of the time. And you know, I was in the lobby and of this retreat center, and Kathy Ann was there. And don't think that that's not a synchronicity or a miracle, because it's not like she stands around in the lobby all day. But she saw me walk in. She saw me walking in. I was sad from the whole death and divorce thing. And I was like, you know, checking in with my little dejected self. And she said, you know, Andrea, one day you're going to come to a point where you will live in an epicenter of love and peace and joy. And you will watch the world's circumstances flinging around you, self-destructing, colliding all around you, and you will be in this center of peace and ease and joy. Oh, how I hungered for that. When she said that, oh, how I hungered to have that. And I have it. I have it. You know? And the reason I have it is because these principles are a lifestyle. They're not just a thing that you try on Sunday. The science of mind needs to be the science of your life. Making each day a series of gratitudes, synchronicities, being thankful, witnessing how the universe is in a conspiracy for your benefit. And I've come to a place where that equanimity that Kathy Ann referenced is true for me. I would say a huge amount of my life. So it's not just about coming to services, although I love it when you do. And it's not just about listening to talks and taking notes and taking classes. It's a lifestyle that you can adopt by doing any of those things we've talked about. Wherever you are, looking up, remembering to do that. But Ernest Holmes said, begin where you are. It would be unscientific to begin anywhere else. So 20 years later, I became a minister in Science of Mind teachings. I know that this practice can heal hurt and build dreams. And I've always wanted to be a part of teaching it to anybody seeking that kind of healing and that kind of dream building. And I feel particularly blessed that I get to speak today, because today is Ernest Holmes' birthday. And he's 137 years old today. And we can bless him and say, happy birthday, Ernest. But happy birthday, Ernest. He won't hear us because he vowed he would never come back to this realm. He's gone on. But in his Sermon by the Sea, he said, you find me 1,000 people in the world who know that Science of Mind is, and use it, and live it as it is, and I'll myself live to see a new world, a new heaven, and a new earth here. So as you experiment and integrate this into your life, you will have results. I know that for all of you. And when you do, you will be a light of spiritual magnificence that lights up you and lights up the rest of us, and we really need that light right now. We need that. But, don't believe all you hear. Just try it for yourself. The world will be really glad you did. So let's have a little prayer. And in honor of Ernest Holmes, I'm going to use one of his affirmations and then end it sort of in prayer. So get centered. I know it's been exciting, cheerleading, all that takes it out of you. And let's know this affirmation from Ernest. My mind is open to new ideas. The Spirit is ever active in me. The divine mind is inexhaustible. There is no weary or monotonous action in spirit. It is forever new and vibrant and fresh with ideas. I know that I am continuously receiving new impressions from life, new, better, and fuller ways of living. I let the newness, the freshness, and the originality of spirit permeate my entire consciousness. And as I know this truth for myself, I know this for each and every one here, that this truth permeates us and inspires each of us to open our hearts to practice what aligns us with our own understanding of spirit. And in so doing, our lives are lifted. And we lift other people's lives at the same instance. And together, we heal hurts and build dreams. And I release my word, and I give thanks. And I say, so it is.